For you, it was kind of a pipe dream at that point.
Well, I wrote my first novel at the age of 12.
What was the name of it?
It was called The Age of Miracles, and it was intended to be adapted into a musical comedy starring Danny Kaye after it was a bestseller as a novel. Of course, it never got anywhere. Who can write a novel at the age of 12?
Do you remember people in your environment there, besides your parents, of course, that strongly affected your thinking?
Well, the good nuns at the school I went to terrorized the hell out of me with visions of hell and damnation and all sorts of horrors. But that's typical of a Roman Catholic education. I mean, you find it in Studs Lanigan and A Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man. Any novel about a Catholic upbringing, you find similar stories. Catholic education is based on brute terrorism. When they're not scaring you psychologically, they're scaring you physically. The nuns had these steel yardsticks, and if you did something they didn't like, you'd be called up to the front of the classroom and told to hold your hand out. I never saw anybody refuse to hold their hand out because we all had this deep-seated suspicion that if we didn't hold our hand out, something even worse would happen. So we'd put our hand out, and then they'd whack us across the knuckles with the yardstick about 5 times. Sometimes it hurt for a day and a half. That sort of created an atmosphere of respectful attention and discouraged dissent.
What was a typical offense for which one would receive such punishment?
Not having your hair combed properly, questioning something one of the nuns said, arguing with a nun, saying you liked the movie that the church said you shouldn't have gone to see.
Do you feel like you received anything worthwhile there?
Yeah, very definitely. They taught me to read and write and do arithmetic and learn a little bit of geography and history. And by and large, I think they do a fairly good job on the educational front. If they would only leave out all the sadomasochism, it might be one of the best educational systems in the world. James Joyce thought he acquired a great deal from the Jesuits, even though in The Portrait of the Artist he portrays the sadistic side of it very brutally and frankly.
So they gave you a pretty decent basic education?
I would say so, yeah.
How about other folks around there? Were there particular characters or people that you remember really affecting your...
There was hardly anybody until I got to high school. There was hardly anybody I could talk to.
Why is that?
Well, because I got some weird combination of genes and imprints that made me a bit weird, or a bit of a maverick. And I learned to keep my mouth shut. If the nuns weren't going to hit me with the yardstick, the other boys were going to get in a gang and beat me up for something I said. So I learned to keep my mouth shut until I got to Brooklyn Technical High School, where I met a whole bunch of people who weren't Irish Catholics, and you could say anything you wanted and nobody would beat you up for it. Matter of fact, the teachers encouraged us to think.
Now, how is it that you, as an aspiring writer, ended up at Brooklyn Technical College?
Well, I had to find some excuse not to go to a Catholic high school. I heard that the Catholic high schools were run by brothers, and they were even worse than the sisters. The sisters only hit you with yardsticks. The brothers would beat you up with their fists. And as a matter of fact, that report has been confirmed from numerous sources, including Ireland, where I lived for 6 years. Anyway, I didn't want to fall into the hands of the brothers and get beaten up with their fists. I figured the yardsticks were enough punishment, so I decided I was going to become an engineer because everybody told me I couldn't be a writer. And I felt that I had a certain talent for engineering. It took a long time to disillusion me with that idea.
How did you get that idea?
I had a talent for mathematics and for physics. I tend to think in quasi-mathematical and geometrical. I tend to think in terms of forces and actions and reactions, and I'm fascinated by isomorphisms, systems that are similar in structure. And that's what a lot of science is about, is finding isomorphisms. And so I thought I could make it as an engineer. And I gradually discovered that, as Sam Hayakawa, a former senator, once a teacher of general semantics, one of his books, he points out that some people are better at symbol manipulation.